The sun rose over the blood-soaked plains of Cannae, casting an eerie glow on what would soon become a graveyard for the mightiest army Rome had ever assembled. 50,000 Roman soldiers, the pride of the Republic, the hammer of its empire, marched in perfect formation, their armor gleaming, their confidence unshaken. They were invincible, or so they believed. Across the field, a smaller, ragged force awaited, led by a man whose name would be etched into the annals of military genius, Hannibal Barca. Hannibal stood calm, his piercing gaze fixed on the Roman legions advancing toward him like a thundercloud. His army was weary, outnumbered nearly 2-1, and far from home. Yet Hannibal didn't flinch. He had already humiliated Rome twice, and today he wasn't just planning to win a battle, he was planning to break the very soul of the Roman Republic. By sunset, history would remember this day as Rome's darkest hour. The clash began, not with chaos, but with precision, a dance choreographed by Hannibal himself. He didn't just understand Roman tactics, he understood the Roman psyche, their pride, their overconfidence, their blind reliance on brute strength. He lured them in, his center deliberately weakened, baiting the Romans into a fatal charge. And then, like a predator springing a trap, the Carthaginian army closed in, a perfect encirclement. The legions, packed too tightly to fight or flee, were cut down like cattle. Swords flashed, spears pierced, and the air was thick with the metallic tang of blood and the screams of tens of thousands of dying men. By nightfall, nearly 70,000 Roman soldiers lay dead or dying on the field of Cannae. It was not just a defeat, it was annihilation. The road to Rome lay wide open. The Republic trembled. Its people whispered in fear. Surely Hannibal would come now, bringing Carthaginian vengeance to the gates of the eternal city. But he didn't. Why? Why did Hannibal, at the height of his power, choose not to march on Rome? It is a question that has haunted historians for more than 2 millennia. Was it a lack of siege equipment, a cold calculation of Rome's resilience, or something deeper, a flaw in Carthage itself, a civilization brilliant in trade and war, but somehow incapable of delivering the killing blow? To answer this, we must journey not just to Cannae, but into the heart of Carthage, a city of merchants, a city of sailors, a city born of ambition and consumed by its rivalry with Rome. This is the story of how a land of traders rose to challenge the might of the Republic, and how, in the end, it fell short of extinguishing the flame of Rome forever. The story of Carthage does not begin on the shores of North Africa, but far to the east, in the bustling port cities of Phoenicia. These were a people of the sea, traders, navigators, and innovators who mastered the Mediterranean like no other. From Tyre and Sidon, their great cities, Phoenician ships sailed the waves, their hulls laden with treasures, vivid purple dye prized by kings, intricate glassware that dazzled the elite, and goods from the farthest reaches of the ancient world. Wherever they went, they left their mark, establishing colonies and trading posts that stretched from the Levant to the far edges of the known world. According to legend, Carthage's story begins with a woman, Elissa, better known as Queen Dido, a princess of Tyre. Her life took a tragic turn when her brother, Pygmalion, the king of Tyre, murdered her husband, the wealthy priest Sychaeus, to seize his fortune. Betrayed and in danger, Dido refused to submit. Under the cover of night, she gathered her loyal followers, loaded her brother's stolen gold onto ships, and escaped into the unknown, bound not by destination, but by the need for freedom. Her journey brought her to the shores of North Africa, where she encountered the Berber tribes who inhabited the land. Determined to carve out a new life, Dido approached King Iarbas of the Berbers and requested land to establish a settlement. Amused by her audacity, Iarbas agreed, but with a catch. She could have only as much land as could be covered by a single ox hide. But Dido was no ordinary refugee. She took the ox hide and, in a stroke of Phoenician ingenuity, cut it into impossibly thin strips, stretching it to encircle an entire hill. That hill became the Byrsa, the heart of a city that would one day rival the greatest powers of the ancient world. Whether fact or fable, the tale of Dido embodies the cunning, resilience, and ambition that would define Carthage for centuries. Archaeological evidence places the founding of Carthage around 814 BCE, making it one of the oldest cities in the Mediterranean. Its location was no accident. Nestled along a sheltered harbor, with fertile lands and a commanding position on vital trade routes, Carthage was destined for greatness. From its humble beginnings as a small Phoenician outpost coast. The city grew rapidly, attracting settlers, merchants, and adventurers who sought opportunity in its thriving markets. As Carthage expanded, it transformed into a maritime empire, establishing colonies and trading posts across the western Mediterranean. Sardinia, Corsica, western Sicily, and parts of Spain fell under its control, cementing its dominance over vital sea lanes and resources. Its ships, sleek and fast, became the lifeblood of its power, spreading Carthaginian influence far and wide. The people of Carthage spoke Punic, a dialect of Phoenician, but their culture was a blend of influences. Phoenician, Berber, and Mediterranean traditions all intertwined. They worshipped a pantheon of gods, chief among them Baal-Hamon, the stern protector of Carthage, and Tanit, a goddess of fertility and prosperity. Their art, architecture, and religious practices reflected this rich fusion, creating a civilization that was as cosmopolitan as it was powerful. By 500 BCE, Carthage was no longer just a thriving city. It was a major power, a titan of trade and naval strength that rivaled the Greek city-states. Its wealth, strategic location, and dominance of the seas made it a force to be reckoned with. But as Carthage rose, so too did another power, one that would challenge its supremacy and ultimately seal its fate: Rome.
Carthage's supremacy in the Mediterranean was born from its unrivaled mastery of the sea, while Rome's ambitions were rooted in land, building roads, fortifying cities, and conquering territories. Carthage turned its gaze to the waves, transforming itself into a maritime juggernaut. The sea was not just a battlefield for Carthage. It was the very lifeblood of its empire. Their ships carried goods, connected colonies, and projected power, making the Mediterranean a Carthaginian domain. At the heart of this naval dominance was the Carthaginian navy, renowned for its size, innovation, and precision. Their warships, most famously the Kinkarems, were engineering marvels, designed for both speed and devastation. Powered by hundreds of oarsmen arranged across multiple banks, these vessels could outmaneuver and overwhelm nearly any enemy fleet. Their rams, forged for smashing through enemy hulls, made these ships as lethal as they were swift. The Quinquereme, a Carthaginian refinement of earlier Phoenician and Greek designs, became the backbone of their naval power. Its balance of speed, maneuverability, and destructive potential allowed Carthage to secure dominance over the western Mediterranean for centuries. Carthage's naval success, however, was not just about the ships. It was about their organization, strategy, and adaptability. They maintained a vast network of naval bases and shipyards, ensuring their fleets were always battle-ready. Their sailors and oarsmen were rigorously trained, their crews among the most skilled in the ancient world. Carthage's admirals were masters of naval strategy, often utilizing superior tactics to outmaneuver and destroy their foes. Carthaginian naval supremacy was seriously challenged during the First Punic War, when Rome, new to naval warfare, developed the corvus, a boarding bridge that allowed their soldiers to turn naval battles into brutal, close-quarters combat. This Roman invention shifted the balance of power at sea as it neutralized Carthage's superior naval tactics by making naval engagements more like land battles. Despite their expertise, the Carthaginians struggled to counter this new strategy, culminating in their eventual defeat in the First Punic War. But Carthage's dominance wasn't solely rooted in its military prowess. It was also powered by its unparalleled economic strength. By controlling critical trade routes and accessing coveted resources, Carthage turned commerce into empire. Carthaginian merchants were bold and shrewd, establishing trading posts in the farthest corners of the Mediterranean and beyond. Their ships carried silver, tin, ivory, and slaves, returning with wine, olive oil, fine pottery, and textiles. They were not just traders. They were the architects of a vast, interconnected economic network. Carthage's economy fueled its military and naval enterprises, creating an empire that ruled not only through might, but through wealth and influence. The city became a beacon of prosperity, its harbors bustling with activity, its markets overflowing with goods from every corner of the known world. In this way, Carthage secured its place as one of the greatest powers of the ancient Mediterranean, a rival Rome could neither ignore nor tolerate. Politically, Carthage was unlike Rome. While Rome was a republic where citizens had a voice, at least in theory, Carthage was an oligarchy ruled by a wealthy elite of merchants and landowners. Power was concentrated in the hands of a few influential families, the so-called Hundred, who dominated the Carthaginian Senate and steered the course of the state. This concentration of power made Carthage's government stable, but less flexible than Rome's, and less able to inspire unity among its people. The Carthaginian military reflected this difference as well. While Rome relied on its citizen soldiers, farmers turned warriors, Carthage turned to mercenaries. From every corner of the Mediterranean, skilled warriors flocked to fight for Carthage. Libyans, Gauls, Iberians, Numidians, and Greeks. These mercenaries gave Carthage access to a diverse and highly capable fighting force. Yet, they came at a cost. Expensive to maintain and quick to mutiny if unpaid, these hired soldiers were as much a liability as they were an asset. Their loyalty was fleeting, and in times of crisis, Carthage's reliance on mercenaries would prove to be a fatal weakness. Carthaginian society was a vibrant mosaic of cultures, blending Phoenician traditions with Berber, Greek, and other Mediterranean influences. This cosmopolitan openness made Carthage a hub of innovation, trade, and learning, a city where ideas and goods flowed freely. But this cultural diversity came with a price, a lack of cohesion. Unlike Rome, where shared traditions and a strong sense of identity bound its people together, Carthage often struggled to unite its populace against a common enemy. For all its wealth, naval power, and innovation, Carthage faced profound challenges. Its reliance on mercenaries, its aristocratic government, and its fragmented culture left it vulnerable. As Rome grew stronger, Carthage's position grew more precarious. The stage was set for a collision of empires, a clash of titans that would determine the fate of the ancient world. One would rise, and the other would fall. The Punic Wars, three brutal conflicts between Rome and Carthage, were more than wars of conquest. They were a fight for survival, a clash of titans, and a battle between two civilizations with fundamentally different visions for the Mediterranean. These wars would decide not just the fate of two cities, but the course of ancient history itself. The First Punic War, 264 to 241 BCE, erupted over control of Sicily, a jewel of strategic importance that both Rome and Carthage coveted. At the time, Rome had no navy to speak of, while Carthage possessed the most formidable fleet in the Mediterranean. Yet in true Roman fashion, they refused to accept limitations. In a remarkable display of determination, Rome built a navy from scratch, even reverse engineering a wrecked Carthaginian ship to copy its design. The war was a grueling struggle, fought on land and at sea, with both sides suffering heavy losses. But after 23 years of attritional warfare, Rome emerged victorious. Carthage was forced to cede Sicily, pay a crippling indemnity, and relinquish its dominance of the sea. The First Punic War exposed Carthage's vulnerabilities. Its reliance on mercenaries left it unstable, and its inability to match Rome's seemingly endless manpower reserves proved disastrous. For Rome, however, the war marked a transformation. No longer just a land-based power, they were now a rising force on the seas, with ambitions that extended far beyond Italy. In the aftermath of this defeat, one man sought to rebuild Carthage's strength, Hamilcar Barca. A brilliant general and shrewd strategist, Hamilcar turned Carthage's focus to Spain, where rich resources and fresh recruits could restore its power. But Hamilcar's ambitions went beyond rebuilding. He instilled in his young son Hannibal a burning hatred for Rome, a vow to avenge Carthage's humiliation. The Second Punic War, 218 to 201 BCE, began with Hannibal's audacious move to fulfill that vow. In one of the most daring campaigns in history, Hannibal led his army, including war elephants, across the Alps, a feat that defied the limits of human endurance and took the Romans completely by surprise. Hannibal's victories in Italy were nothing short of legendary. At Trebia, Lake Trasimene, and the infamous Battle of Cannae, he inflicted catastrophic losses on Rome, annihilating entire armies with masterful tactics. At Cannae, Hannibal executed a double envelopment so devastating that it is still studied in military academies today. By the end of the battle, nearly 70,000 Roman soldiers lay dead, a slaughter that brought the the Republic to the brink of collapse. But Hannibal's brilliance was not enough. Despite his victories, he lacked the siege equipment to take Rome itself. Worse, the Roman Republic's greatest strength, its resilience, proved unbreakable. Even in the face of annihilation, Rome refused to surrender. Hannibal's attempts to incite rebellion among Rome's allies largely failed, and the tide of the war began to turn. As Hannibal fought in Italy, Rome found its champion in Scipio Africanus, one of the most gifted generals in history. Scipio devised a daring counter-strategy. Rather than facing Hannibal directly, he would strike at Carthage itself. Leading an invasion of North Africa, Scipio forced Hannibal to abandon Italy and return home to defend his city. The final showdown came at the Battle of Zama in 202 BCE. Hannibal, though still a brilliant tactician, was outmatched by Scipio's superior cavalry and strategic ingenuity. Carthage's army was crushed, and Hannibal fled into exile. The Second Punic War ended in humiliation for Carthage. The once mighty city was forced to cede Spain, surrender its navy, pay another massive indemnity, and bow to Rome's authority. Carthage was now little more than a client state, its power broken, its future uncertain. But Rome was not done. The Third Punic War, 149 to 146 BCE, was less a war than a calculated act of destruction. Driven by fear, greed, and a deep-seated hatred of their old rival, Rome sought to erase Carthage from existence. Cato the Elder, a Roman senator, ended every speech with the same chilling refrain: Carthago delenda est, Carthage must be destroyed. Despite being weakened, disarmed, and surrounded by enemies, Carthage refused to submit to Rome's humiliating demands. Their defiance led to a 3-year siege, during which the city fought desperately for its survival. But the odds were insurmountable. Led by Scipio Aemilianus, the grandson of Scipio Africanus, the Roman army systematically destroyed Carthage, brick by brick. The final days were a nightmare. Fires consumed the city as Roman soldiers slaughtered its inhabitants or sold them into slavery. By the end, Carthage was no more. Legend has it that the Romans salted the earth to ensure nothing would ever grow there again, a symbolic act of utter eradication. The destruction of Carthage marked the end of an era. A city that had once ruled the waves, that had stood as Rome's greatest rival, was wiped from the map. In its place rose Rome, now the unchallenged master of the Mediterranean. The Punic Wars had transformed Rome from a regional power into an empire in all but name, paving the way for its dominance of the ancient world.
The story of Carthage is not just a tale of destruction. It is a stark reminder of the fragility of empire. It reveals that even the mightiest civilizations, with their wealth, power, and influence, are never invincible. Carthage's rise to greatness was built on ingenuity, ambition, and resilience. Yet its fall exposes the vulnerabilities that lie at the heart of even the most formidable powers. Carthage thrived as a maritime superpower, dominating trade routes and building a vast network of colonies. But its success also sowed the seeds of its destruction. Prosperity bred complacency, and internal divisions fractured its unity when it was needed most. The reliance on mercenaries, the political infighting, and the failure to recognize the evolving threat posed by Rome all contributed to its downfall. In this way, Carthage represents the precarious balance empires must maintain between ambition and caution, strength and adaptability, unity and discord. The fate of Carthage prompts reflection on the cyclical nature of history. Empires rise and fall, often undone not just by external enemies, but by internal weaknesses, economic inequality, political corruption, overextension of military power, and cultural fragmentation. These forces, present in Carthage's story, resonate as warnings for modern societies. The destruction of Carthage is not merely an ancient tragedy. It is a cautionary tale for all who wield power and assume it will last forever. Yet amidst the ruins of Carthage, we find more than just a lesson in fragility. We also see a testament to human ingenuity and resilience. The Carthaginians were skilled traders, masterful engineers, and cosmopolitan thinkers who left a legacy that outlived their empire. Their advancements in navigation, economics, and urban planning influenced the Mediterranean world and beyond. Even in defeat, their achievements remind us of humanity's enduring capacity for innovation
cooperation and cultural exchange. The ruins of Carthage still stand as a silent witness to both its glory and its fall. They are a stark reminder that no empire, no matter how powerful, is immune to collapse. But they also inspire us to reflect on what can be salvaged from the ashes of destruction. The Carthaginians, in their final moments, displayed a courage and determination that has echoed through the centuries. Facing annihilation, they resisted with a ferocity that earned them the grudging respect of their conquerors. As we reflect on the rise and fall of Carthage, we are reminded that history is not just a record of the past. It is a mirror for the present and a guide for the future. The echoes of Carthage resonate through the ages, reminding us of the fragility of empire and the enduring resilience of the human spirit.